There is one word in all of human history so sacred that for thousands of years, no one has dared say it out loud. Not because it was forgotten, not because it was lost, but because the people who carried it decided that the weight of it was too great for ordinary breath to hold. They looked at this word and they trembled. They looked at it and they bowed. And somewhere along the centuries, the decision was made, quietly and with full intention, that the mouth of a mortal human being was simply not the right vessel for what this word contained. Think about that for a moment. We live in an age where every sacred thing has been flattened. Every mystery has been handed to an algorithm. Every question gets a 3-second answer. But this one word has survived every empire, every translation, every attempt at domestication. It is still, right now, in this very moment, the most protected syllable in the history of religion. And if you stay with me today, you are going to understand exactly why. Not just as a historical curiosity, not just as a piece of theology, but as something that could completely reframe how you speak to God for the rest of your life. You didn't find this video by accident. I want you to know that whatever brought you here today, whatever you are carrying, whatever question has been sitting inside your chest without an answer, the fact that you are watching this right now means something. So stay with me. We are going to go somewhere today that most people never reach. My name is Daniel. I have spent more than 40 years studying the Hebrew Scriptures, their language, their structure, the ancient world that gave birth to them. I am not here to impress you with credentials. I am here because I believe that what I am about to show you is one of the most misunderstood and most underappreciated secrets in the entire biblical text. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Before we go further, I want to ask you something. If this kind of teaching reaches you, if it speaks to something real in you, please take 2 seconds and hit the like button right now. And in the comments below, I want you to write these 5 words. His name is my anchor. Write it out. Not as a performance, write it as a declaration, as a signal to yourself and to heaven that you are choosing today to stand on something that cannot be moved. Then subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a teaching like this one. His name is my anchor. Write that right now. Now, let us go back. Let us go all the way back. Are you tired of praying words that feel hollow? Have you ever stood in a quiet room, eyes closed, lips moving, and felt like your prayer was bouncing off the ceiling? Do you feel like God is real in theory but somehow far away in practice? Like there is a glass wall between you and the presence you are reaching for? I know that feeling. And I want to tell you today that the distance you feel may not be what you think it is. It may not be a failure of your faith. It may be something much more specific. It may be that you have been given the address but never told what the door looks like, because there is a name. There is a name that the Scriptures describe as the name above all names. The name that is too holy for ordinary speech. The name that the entire Hebrew tradition has wrapped in layer after layer of reverence and protection. And most people who love God have never once stopped to ask the question, why? Why do they protect it so fiercely? What is actually inside that name that caused an entire civilization to say, we will not say this word aloud? The name is written with 4 Hebrew letters. Yod, Hey, Vav, Hey. In Hebrew, letters run from right to left. And these 4 letters together form the word that scholars call the Tetragrammaton, a Greek word that simply means the 4 letters. In your English Bible, wherever you see the word Lord written in all capital letters, that is where the original Hebrew text carries these 4 letters. Not a title, not a description, a name. The personal, intimate, covenantal name of the God of Israel. And that name appears in the Hebrew Scriptures more than 6,800 times. Stop right there. More than 6,800 times. In the original Hebrew text, God signed his name to his own story over 6,800 times. It appears in every book of the Hebrew Bible except 3. It is written into the grain of the text, the way a craftsman carves his mark into every piece of work he makes. God did not hide this name. He put it everywhere. And yet the tradition that received this name, the tradition that lived inside it and breathed it and built their entire civilization around it, that tradition eventually looked at this name and said, "We will not speak it out loud." What happened? What changed? This is where the story gets extraordinary. In the beginning, the name was spoken. The earliest records of Hebrew religious life show a people who called on this name openly. The book of Genesis tells us that in the early generations of humanity, people began to call on the name of the Lord. They spoke it. They prayed it. It was not a secret. It was not hidden away. It was the living address of a living God. And people used it, but something shifted. After the Babylonian exile in the 6th century before the Common Era, a new reverence began to take hold. And by the 3rd century before the Common Era, the practice had become settled and serious. The divine name was considered too holy, too weighty, too other, to be placed on ordinary human lips in ordinary circumstances. The risk was not irreverence in the coarse sense. The risk was something more subtle. The risk was that a name carrying that much reality, that much being, might be handled carelessly, might be worn down by repetition into something small. So they protected it. They built a fence around it with language. When the scriptures were read aloud in the synagogue and the reader reached one of those 6,800 occurrences of the 4-letter name, they would not say the name. They would say Adonai, my Lord. When they were simply speaking in daily life and needed to refer to God, they would say Hashem, the name, just the name, as a category of holiness too large to look at directly, the way you do not look directly at the sun. And there was one exception, one single, extraordinary exception. Once a year, on Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, the holiest day in the Jewish calendar, one person, and one person only, was permitted to speak the name out loud, the high priest, the Kohen Gadol. He would enter the Holy of Holies in the temple in Jerusalem, the innermost chamber, the room where the presence of God was understood, to rest in a particular and concentrated way, a room that no one else entered, ever, under any circumstances. And he would speak the name, not once. The records tell us he pronounced it 10 times throughout the entire Yom Kippur service. And when the priests and the people standing in the temple courts heard the sound of that name come out of the Holy of Holies, they would fall to the ground. They prostrated themselves. They covered their faces, because something in them recognized that they were standing at the edge of something they could not contain. Listen to me carefully. The high priest who spoke the name in the temple during Yom Kippur did not shout it. Some accounts tell us he spoke it softly, even quietly, so that the sound was absorbed into the singing of the other priests around him. The name was not a performance. It was not a demonstration of power. It was an intimate word. spoken in the innermost room, between the representative of a people and the God who had claimed that people as his own. And then the temple was destroyed. In the year 70 of the Common Era, Roman forces tore the temple in Jerusalem down to its foundations. The Holy of Holies ceased to exist as a physical space. The high priest had no place to stand. And the name, that name, which had been spoken 10 times each year in that particular room, went silent. It has not been spoken in that formal, covenantal way since then. Now I want to take you deeper, because the history is important, but what I really want you to understand is the meaning. What does this name actually mean? What is inside those 4 letters that made a whole civilization treat them with more care than anything else in their world? But before we get there, I need you to understand something about the world this name came into, because you cannot hear the weight of this name if you do not understand the world it landed in. The ancient world was full of gods, not metaphorically, literally. Every city had a god. Every storm had a god. Every river and every harvest and every war had a divine name behind it. And the gods of the ancient world were, by and large, gods of power and function. You called on the rain god for rain. You called on the war god for victory. You called on the fertility god for children and crops. The gods were useful. They had roles. They fit into the architecture of the world the way politicians fit into the architecture of a city. Powerful. Yes. Important. Yes. But essentially comprehensible. Essentially containable. You knew what they were for, and then into that world, into that crowded, busy, fully explained divine landscape, comes this name. 4 letters. No gender indicated, no domain assigned, no function listed, just existence. Just being, just the declaration that this particular divine presence is not a god of rain or war or harvest, but the ground from which all of those things emerge. Not a specialized deity. The source of all that is. Do you understand how strange that was? Do you understand what a disruption that was to the entire framework of ancient religious thought? Not a god among gods. The ground of being itself. This is why the name required protection. Not because it was fragile, because it was categorically different from every other sacred word that had ever been spoken. It was not the name of a being inside the universe. It was the name of the being in whom the universe exists. Go back to the burning bush. You know the story. Moses is in the wilderness, tending his father-in-law's flocks, and he sees a bush that burns but is not consumed. He turns aside to look, and from the bush, a voice speaks, a voice that identifies itself as the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob. And God tells Moses that he is being sent back to Egypt, back to the place where his people are enslaved, to lead them out. Moses, understandably, is not immediately certain this is a good plan, and he asks a question. If the people ask me, "What is the name of the one who sent you?" what shall I say? And here is the answer. God says to Moses, in Exodus chapter 3, verse 14, YHWH. Those are the Hebrew words. And then God says, "Tell the people of Israel, Yah has sent me to you." YHWH. The King James Bible translates it, "I am that I am." Modern translations often say, "I am who I am." But the Hebrew verb Yah comes from the root Hayah, which means to be, to exist, to become. And the Hebrew language does not have a simple present tense the way English does. So this phrase carries all three dimensions at once. I am, I was, I will be. Translators have reached for it from every angle. I will be what I will be. I will be who I will be. The range of translation is not a sign of confusion. It is a sign that the meaning is bigger than any single translation can hold. Not a title, not a description, not a role. Pure existence. Speaking, the name YHWH, the Tetragrammaton, is understood by scholars to be the third-person form of this same verb. Where God says, I am, the name says He is, or He causes to be, or He will be. The name is being itself, not a name that points to a being, a name that is constituted by the act of existing. When Moses asks, "Who sent you?" the answer is the one whose very nature is to be. The one who exists not because something else caused him to exist, but because existence is what he is. Pay attention to the next sentence. This means every time you call on God, you are not calling on a person who happens to exist. You are calling on existence itself. You are reaching toward the source of all being, to the ground of all reality, the one in whom, as the New Testament echoes it in Acts chapter 17, we live and move and have our being. Do you feel the difference? Do you feel what shifts when you understand this? Most of us approach God as though we are making a phone call to a distant relative, a powerful one. Yes, a caring one, hopefully, but still, someone on the other end of a line, someone who may or may not pick up, someone whose attention we are trying to get. But if the name is true, if the name means what it says, then God is not on the other end of a line. God is the ground you are standing on. God is the breath you are using to call His name. You do not reach toward Him as toward something absent. You awaken to Him as toward something that was never not present. That is what the silence around the name is protecting. Not a secret that would give you power, a reality too immense for casual handling. Now I want to talk about what this means for you, practically, today, because I know some of you are watching this in a difficult season. I know some of you have been carrying something heavy for a long time, the kind of weight that follows you into the morning, that is still sitting on your chest at 3 a.m. when the rest of the world is asleep, and you are alone with the thoughts you cannot say to anyone. The kind of weight that makes you functional in public, capable and present and fine, while something underneath is quietly fraying. Maybe it is grief that will not lift. Maybe it is a relationship that is broken in a way you do not know how to fix, or a word that was said to you that you replay against your will, or a version of yourself you used to be that feels unreachable now. Maybe it is a fear about the future, a sense that the ground under your life is less stable than you once thought it was, that something you built your life on has shifted and you are not sure where the solid places are anymore. Maybe you have been praying and not feeling heard, and somewhere inside you, a quiet doubt has started to grow. Not a loud doubt, not the kind that announces itself, just a whisper, the kind that comes at the end of a long day when you are too tired to argue with it, that says, "Is anyone actually listening?" I want to speak to that whisper right now. The tradition that gave us the protective silence around the name was not a tradition of a hidden God. It was a tradition of a God so present, so real, so much the ground of reality itself, that the name required the same care you would give to holding something that you knew. If you dropped it, would not break. But you might. The silence was not about distance. The silence was about nearness so overwhelming that ordinary casual handling would be a kind of insult. The way you do not talk about someone you love most in the world, the same way you talk about a vague acquaintance, So here is what I want to give you. Not a technique, not a 5-step program, a practice, a way of standing in relationship to this name that honors what is inside it. The first thing I want you to do is slow down before you pray. Not slow down as in delay. Slow down as in arrive. Before you say a single word to God, take 10 seconds, just 10 seconds, and remember what the name means. He exists. He is here, right now, in this room, in this moment, not waiting for your prayer to begin before he shows up. Already here, already present, already the ground you are standing on. Let that land before you open your mouth. The second thing I want you to do is change the way you reach. Most of us pray as if we are broadcasting into space, hoping the signal gets through. I want you to start praying as if you are already inside the presence, not reaching toward it. Because if the name is true, that is exactly where you are. You are already inside the being of the one who is being itself. Your prayer is not an attempt to establish contact. It is an attempt to become aware of a contact that was never broken. The third thing I want you to do is sit with the silence that the tradition built. Not permanently, not as a replacement for speaking, but once, this week, find 5 minutes of complete quiet, no words, no requests, no agenda, just sit with the name in your mind. Not spoken, just held. The tradition protected the name with silence because they understood that some realities are too deep for language to touch them first. Silence is not absence. Silence is the room where the deepest presence lives. The fourth thing, and this one may surprise you, is let the name expand your sense of what prayer actually is. If God is not a distant person but the ground of existence itself, then prayer is not just the formal moments when you fold your hands and close your eyes. Every moment of genuine awareness is prayer. Every time you look at something beautiful and feel that pull towards something beyond it, that is prayer. Every time you sit with someone in pain and feel the weight of their suffering as real and important, that is prayer. Every time you make a choice toward goodness when the easier choice was available, that is prayer, the name that means I am. I was, I will be, is not a name that can be contained inside a church or a synagogue or a quiet room. It is the name that is present in every atom of the universe. And that means every moment of genuine human being is already, in some way, touching the hem of it. I want to add a fifth practice, and this one is perhaps the most countercultural of all. Stop performing your faith for a week. Just 1 week. Stop trying to say the right words in the right order with the right emotion in your voice. Stop evaluating your own prayer the way a critic evaluates a performance. Just be honest. Just be present. Say what is actually true. If you are angry, say you are angry. If you do not understand, say you do not understand. If you are scared, say that the tradition that protected the name of God with silence was not protecting a God who needed to be approached with polished language. It was protecting the dignity of an encounter so real that dishonesty would be the only true offense. You cannot offend the ground of being by bringing your real self to it. You can only offend it by bringing a performance and calling it a self. The name that means pure existence is not impressed by religious language. It is moved by the sound of a real human being arriving as they actually are. Not religion as obligation. Not God as obligation. God as the ground of all reality, so thoroughly present that the only way to escape him would be to stop existing entirely. The rabbis of the Talmudic tradition used a word for this that I want to give you. Shekinah, It means the presence, the indwelling, the immanence of God in the world. Not God viewed from a distance, God as a presence that fills every space, the way light fills a room. The tradition that protected the name with silence also taught that the name was not sealed away in heaven. Untouchable. It was the closest thing in existence. Closer than your own heartbeat. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you felt that? When was the last time you stopped in the middle of an ordinary day and had even a moment, even a flash, of recognizing that you are standing inside something immense, something alive, something that knows your name the same way you know your own face? Those moments are not accidents. Those moments are the name breaking through. Someone is watching this right now, and you have spent a long time feeling like your prayers are not reaching anywhere. You have done everything right. You have shown up. You have been faithful. And the silence on the other end has felt like rejection. I want you to hear this directly. It was never silence on God's end. It was the silence of something so close, so interior, so woven into the fabric of your own existence, that you were listening for a voice coming from outside when the voice was already inside. The name that means I am is the name of the one who is already in the room where you are sitting, already in the moment where you are living. The name that cannot be casually spoken cannot be casually absent. Either you did not find this teaching by accident. Whatever you needed to hear today, whatever crack in the wall, you needed light to come through. This is it. His name is your anchor, not a rope thrown from a distance, an anchor that goes all the way to the bottom of reality itself. I want to tell you one more thing about the name before we close. The 4 Hebrew letters of the Tetragrammaton, Yod, Hey, Vav, Hey, have fascinated teachers and thinkers for thousands of years. Not because they are magical symbols, but because of what they point to. The letter Yod is the smallest letter in the Hebrew alphabet. It is described as a single point, almost like a seed, holding within it the potential of everything that follows. The Hey is connected, in the grammar of Hebrew, to the breath. Some have described the sound of the Tetragrammaton not as a spoken word, but as the sound of breathing itself. The 2 exhales, the inhale, the exhale, the breath that God breathed into the first human being in Genesis, making him, as the text says, a living soul. The sound of life. The sound that every living creature makes from the moment it enters the world to the moment it leaves it. The name that cannot be spoken may be the name that is spoken constantly by every living thing, without ever realizing it. Every breath you take is a prayer you do not know you are praying. Stand in that for a moment and consider this. The people who first received this tradition, the people who decided to protect the name with silence, were not people who were distant from their God. They were people who felt the presence so acutely that casual handling felt dangerous. The silence was born from closeness, not from distance. You cover your eyes not when the light is too weak to see, but when the light is so bright that unshielded eyes cannot bear it. The protection of the name was not the behavior of people who were afraid their God might not be real. It was the behavior of people who were overwhelmed by how real he was. Not a technique, not a method, a recognition. And I want to close by bringing you back to where we started. Because where we started was not just a fact about ancient religion. Where we started was with something that changes how you live today. There is a word so sacred that for thousands of years, no one has dared say it out loud. And the reason is not that it is dangerous. The reason is that it is the most real thing that exists. and reality at its most concentrated, reality at its source, reality as its own ground and its own cause. That kind of reality does not wait for your attention. It does not need your acknowledgement to be true. But your life will be different. Your prayers will be different. The way you carry your own existence will be different. When you begin to live as though the name is true. He is, He was, He will be, and He is here. Right now, in this moment, in the room where you are sitting, in the breath you are using to listen to this sentence, in the weight you are carrying, and in the hope you have not yet let yourself feel, in the grief that is still raw and in the future that is still unwritten. He is not distant. He is not silent. He is the ground of the ground you stand on. His name is your anchor, not a nice thought. An anchor goes down, through the water, through the dark, through everything uncertain, all the way to the bottom, and it holds, not because you are strong enough to hold it, because the bottom is real and the anchor reaches it. If this teaching has opened something in you today, if it has shifted something, if it has given you a new way to stand, I want to ask you to do 3 things. First, write in the comments right now, His name is my anchor. Write it out. Make it your declaration for this week. Every time you feel the ground shift under you, come back to that. Every time the silence feels too long, come back to that. His name is my anchor. Second, share this video with someone who needs it. Someone who is in a hard season. Someone who needs to be reminded that they are not abandoned. That the silence is not absence. Third, subscribe and turn on notifications so that the next time we go somewhere like this together, you do not miss it. There is so much more to explore. The names of God are not a single teaching, they are a lifetime of teachings. We have only stood at the edge of one today, but I want to close with something that is not a summary. It is a blessing. May the one whose name is I Am, the one who is the ground of all being, the one whose presence fills every breath of every living thing, may He make Himself known to you, not in some distant future, not in some idealized spiritual state, but today, in the ordinary moments, in the quiet spaces between your thoughts, in the place where you have been waiting without knowing what you were waiting for. May the name that cannot be spoken speak itself into your life in the way that only presence can, not as a word, as a reality you can no longer pretend is absent. He is, and you are held. Go carry that.